18 years ago, a young Boston University student vanished on her way from work to her dorm on a snowy night, leaving her family in despair and the city shaken. Authorities initially suspected people close to her, from an ex-boyfriend to a few strangers around the neighborhood. But no body was found, and the scarce evidence quickly led the investigation to a dead end. Still, throughout all those years, Emily's parents never stopped hoping, clinging to the faint belief that one day they would learn what truly happened to their daughter. Then, when DNA technology and genealogy were applied, a seemingly insignificant detail from the old case file became a breakthrough, opening an entirely new line of inquiry, and that very detail sent shockwaves through the Boston community, revealing a truth no one dared imagine. Before diving into the story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell to stay updated on the latest cases. Boston, the night of December 12, 2007. The city blanketed in thick white snow, temperatures dropping to 25 degrees Fahrenheit, with icy winds whistling through narrow streets, forcing anyone outside to huddle in their coats. At 10:15 p.m., a small coffee shop in Jamaica Plain had just turned off its lights, the faint smell of roasted coffee lingering inside. That was when Emily Carter, a 22-year-old Boston University student, took off her apron, said goodbye to her coworkers, and stepped outside. Emily worked the evening shift to help cover tuition, her schedule packed with classes and work, but she always made a point to let her roommate know when she was done with a late shift. On the empty sidewalk, she pressed her phone to her ear, her voice tired but cheerful, saying briefly, "I'm heading back now." That would later become the last time her friends heard her voice. Snow fell in sheets under the dim glow of streetlights. A woman passing by the MBTA Green Line station later reported seeing a young woman, slim, walking quickly, her steps sinking deep into the snow, her light-colored coat standing out against the cold, dark night. Security footage from the station captured a few blurry seconds of a figure walking toward the tracks, but the poor quality made it impossible to clearly identify her face. From that moment, Emily vanished without a trace. Her phone went dead, no messages, no response. Her roommate called repeatedly, voice growing frantic, but only reached voicemail. The night dragged on heavily, the usually lively student apartment now filled with tension, as everyone waited anxiously for a knock at the door that never came. By nearly 2 a.m., Emily's parents sped from Worcester to Boston, their faces pale with fear. They parked in front of the dorm, rushing into their daughter's room, hoping to find her asleep, but found only emptiness. The street near the MBTA station remained snow-covered and cold, as if it had swallowed the last trace of Emily. With no other options, the family called the Boston PD, officially reporting her missing. A case file was opened that night, marking the tense moment when Emily Carter, a young student full of ambition, was officially declared missing, launching a mystery that would stun the city for years to come. The initial report was quickly entered into the system, triggering a series of urgent investigation procedures. The morning of December 13, 2007, with Boston still cloaked in frost after the heavy snowfall, the Boston Police Department headquarters was already alight early. In the investigation room in Roxbury, the missing person Emily Carter file sat neatly on the desk. Lieutenant David Morales, head of the investigation team, called an urgent meeting, demanding all personnel focus entirely on the case. He stressed, "The most critical thing right now is to reconstruct every step Emily took on December 12th. We need a precise timeline, down to the minute, leaving no detail overlooked." The room was silent, except for the sound of pens scratching rapidly. The first confirmed point was 5 p.m. According to coworkers at the small coffee shop in Jamaica Plain, Emily arrived on time. She wore a light-colored coat, a dark knit scarf, and carried a small navy blue backpack she often used for textbooks. The shop was busier than usual due to the cold, and Emily barely left the counter, handling trays of drinks. Another employee, Sarah Lopez, recalled that Emily was cheerful, even joking about an upcoming exam. No one noticed any signs of distress or unease in the young woman. From 5 p.m. to 10 p.m., Emily's entire shift went as usual. Police verified through the shop's POS system. Emily logged in with her employee code, took orders, processed payments, all consistent with internal camera footage. At 10 p.m., customers thinned out, and Emily cleaned tables and put away equipment. At 10:15 p.m., footage showed her removing her apron, saying goodbye to coworkers, and walking out the door. Outside, the snow fell heavier, the wind whipping through the nearly empty street. As soon as she left the shop, Emily called her roommate. A 45-second call. Cell provider data confirmed she was near the shop during the call. Her roommate reported that Emily said briefly, "I'm heading back, maybe 20 minutes." This was the last communication from Emily's phone. After that, her phone went silent, with no further signal. Police began reviewing cameras along the route Emily might have taken. They found that at the MBTA Heath Street station, at 10:20 p.m., a camera captured blurry footage of a girl matching her description, slim, light-colored coat, walking quickly through the snow. The clip lasted only a few seconds before the figure disappeared into a blind spot. This was the last visual evidence of Emily. Other cameras in the area recorded nothing further. The only witness was a middle-aged woman living near the station who said that around 10:20 p.m., while walking her dog, she saw a young woman pass under a streetlight. She was walking fast, head down, like she wasn't paying attention to anything around her. "I thought about saying hello, but didn't because it was so cold," she recalled. Her account matched the camera data, supporting the theory that Emily was at Heath Street at 10:20. The problem lay in the time immediately after. From 10:20 to 10:35, exactly 15 minutes. There was no visual evidence, no phone signal, no additional witnesses. The investigation team called this the critical gap, and Morales circled it in red on a whiteboard. "We need to know what happened in those 15 minutes. That's the key," he said. In the investigation room, officers built a detailed timeline chart. 5 p.m. Emily arrives at the shop, starts her shift. 10 p.m. Customers dwindle. She prepares to end her shift. 10:15 p.m. Emily leaves the shop, confirmed by internal camera. 10:16 p.m. Calls roommate, lasting 45 seconds. 10:20 p.m. Appears on MBTA Heath Street camera, corroborated by witness. 10:21, 10:35 p.m. Critical gap, disappearance. 2 a.m. Family from Worcester reports to police. Each timestamp was printed, paired with statements, and marked in red ink. Officers stood around the board, their eyes fixed on the red gap in the middle of the chart, a frustrating void that seemed to swallow the entire case. Morales pointed at a map of the area around the station, where streets crisscrossed but cameras were sparse. He said, "If Emily left Heath Street heading west, she could have entered a camera blind zone. We need to check every household in that area, pull every private camera. Every shop, every home could hold a clue." A team of investigators was dispatched to knock on doors around the station, asking for any sightings of Emily. Meanwhile, the phone data analysis team tried to pinpoint Emily's last exact location via cell towers. Results showed the signal cut off just after 10:17, meaning just minutes before the Heath Street camera footage. This means the phone was turned off or the battery was removed. "That's not normal," a technician noted. As December 13th ended, the investigation room's timeline chart was covered in details. Photos from cameras, a Boston map dotted with red pins, witness statements meticulously written. But the 15-minute critical gap remained an immovable question mark. The team knew that to find Emily Carter, they had to trace exactly what happened in that short but fateful window. Morales tapped his pen on the board, closing the meeting. "We have all the pieces, except the most critical one. Find the answer in these 15 minutes, and we'll crack the case." The morning of December 14th, 2007, with Emily Carter's timeline completed and plastered across the investigation room walls, Boston PD shifted to a new phase, expanding the search within a 1-mile radius of the MBTA Heath Street station. The last place cameras captured her faint silhouette. Local police, K-9 units, and volunteer Boston University students fanned out through narrow alleys and park trails. At a field command post in Jamaica Plain, a large map hung on the wall, bristling with red pins marking searched areas. All focus turned to the dark path along Riverway Park, a route linking residential areas to the muddy river, where many believed Emily had passed. In the first 24 hours, efforts yielded nothing. No new traces, no new witnesses stepping forward. But at dawn on December 15th, over 36 hours after Emily's disappearance, an officer discovered a navy blue backpack buried under snow, tucked near the rusted iron staircase leading into Riverway Park. A quick check confirmed it was the backpack Emily often carried. Not far away, under dirty snow, they found a red knit scarf, half wrapped and scattered on the ground. Emily's roommate later confirmed it was the scarf she wore during evening shifts. The scene was immediately cordoned off. Yellow tape went up, and the forensic team worked under flashlights and heavy snow. A technician shook their head, noting, "No obvious bloodstains, but we'll need lab tests." The scarf was sealed as evidence #017, the backpack #018. Lieutenant Morales personally signed off to ensure the chain of custody remained intact. That night, Riverway Park glowed with portable floodlights. Rows of police and volunteers moved in a line, raking snow, inspecting every tree and trash can. K-9 units sniffed relentlessly, but the thick snow erased any scent. Side paths into the park were searched, revealing only faint, jumbled footprints too blurry to trace. In the report to the family, Morales kept his tone calm but candid. "We've found Emily's backpack and scarf, but not her. Everything suggests this wasn't a robbery." Emily's parents sat stunned, hands trembling, their eyes reflecting cold dread. Their daughter wasn't missing because of money. She was in someone's hands. On the third day after Emily's disappearance, Boston media broke the story. The Boston Globe ran a succinct headline: "Boston University student mysteriously missing, personal items found at Riverway Park." The news spread rapidly, piling immense pressure on the investigation team. But Morales knew the first pieces of evidence were just a starting point, not the finish line. The critical task remained filling the critical gap, that fateful 15-minute window, because only by clarifying what happened then could they hope to unlock the entire case. That afternoon, the evidence from Riverway Park was delivered to Boston PD headquarters and taken straight to the forensic lab. The air was thick with tension, every eye fixed on Emily Carter's navy blue backpack and red knit scarf, the only remnants from the night she vanished. Lieutenant Morales stood by silently, watching as technicians began preliminary examinations. He knew better than anyone that in cases like this, time was the greatest enemy, and a single overlooked clue could unravel everything. First, the phone data. Logs from the carrier confirmed Emily's phone disconnected from the Jamaica Plain cell tower at 10:30 p.m., just 10 minutes after the Heath Street camera footage. This meant the phone being turned off, or its battery removed, aligned with a critical gap circled on the timeline. The immediate question was, did Emily turn off her phone, or was she forced to? Morales circled 10:30 on the chart, adding a note, "Phone silent, possible coercion." Next was the backpack, evidence #018, opened in a sterile room under UV light and handheld microscopes. Inside, Emily's leather wallet was intact, student ID, some loose change, credit cards untouched. Her dorm keychain was neatly tucked in a small pocket, no signs of rummaging or theft. This allowed police to almost entirely rule out robbery as a motive. Morales noted clearly, not robbery, likely targeted abduction. The presence of all personal items further supported the theory that Emily didn't leave willingly. The forensic team moved to collect samples from the backpack's exterior. They used special tape to roll over zippers, straps, and fabric, capturing any fibers or fingerprints. A technician found a few short brown hairs caught in the zipper, placed into a small plastic bag labeled evidence #018A. Additionally, dark fibers were found on the backpack's bottom corner, uncertain if they belonged to Emily or came from contact when it was discarded. The red knit scarf, evidence #017, was examined just as carefully. Under UV light, technicians spotted faint glowing streaks, possibly cotton fibers or even biological traces. Cotton swabs collected samples, stored in chilled vials. A stretched tear along the scarf's edge, as if yanked hard, was noted. This led investigators to hypothesize a brief struggle before Emily vanished. All fingerprints lifted from the backpack and scarf were scanned, but preliminary results showed they were too smudged for accurate analysis. Boston PD's 2007 technology was limited. No rapid DNA analysis, no expansive databases like in later years. Thus, all hair fibers, fingerprints, and scarf traces were sealed, labeled, and sent to cold storage for long-term preservation. Morales stressed to the team, "We must be patient. We may not have the tech today, but the future might." Concurrently, the tech team built a connection map. 10:15 p.m., Emily leaves the shop. 10:20, appears at Heath Street. 10:30, phone goes off. 10:35, backpack and scarf found at Riverway. The chart covered an entire wall in the investigation room, red arrows linking timestamps. The critical gap loomed heavier with the phone silence detail. In the report to superiors, Morales wrote, "The evidence suggests this wasn't a robbery." The phone going silent at 10:30, combined with the discarded backpack and scarf, supports the abduction hypothesis. We haven't determined if Emily was subdued at Riverway Park or taken elsewhere. Biological samples are stored, awaiting future technology. Meanwhile, the team faced frustration. No clear footprints preserved in the thick snow, no additional cameras capturing the park, no new witnesses, but Morales looked at the sealed evidence bags as if they held a promise. This case wouldn't stay dormant forever. The day ended with a tense meeting at the command post. The Boston map, with Riverway Park marked by additional flags, hung prominently. The timeline on the whiteboard was updated with new details. All clues pointed to one conclusion. Emily Carter left the coffee shop safely, passed through the MBTA station, but within 15 minutes, she vanished along with her phone's signal. The evidence suggested someone's intervention. From this moment, the investigation was no longer about a simple missing person. It was about tracking a calculated abduction. While the forensic lab sealed the initial evidence samples, Boston PD's field team continued gathering footage from cameras around MBTA Heath Street and Riverway Park. They knocked on doors at every shop and apartment building with surveillance systems. After 2 days, 5 cameras were extracted, all recording between 10:15 and 10:35 p.m. on December 12. But the results were largely disappointing. A camera at a convenience store on South Huntington Avenue showed a figure hurrying by, possibly female, in a light-colored coat. However, heavy snow blurred the image, making it impossible to confirm if it was Emily. Another camera at a nearby parking lot captured a flash of headlights from a dark-colored vehicle parked on the road, then driving off. No license plate was visible. The remaining 3 cameras, one at the MBTA station entrance, one on a small street near Riverway, and one from a high-rise apartment, showed only faint glimmers in the snowy haze. Images of passers-by and vehicles were too low quality for identification. In the report, a technician noted bluntly, "No frame meets facial recognition standards. Footage is for reference only, not conclusive." Morales read it, frowned, and pinned a red marker on the investigation map. He called these fragmentary leads, pieces of a larger puzzle, but not enough to form a clear picture. Meanwhile, the witness investigation team returned to the station area. A taxi driver, Robert Jameson, came forward. He said that around 10:20 p.m., while driving on South Huntington Avenue, he briefly saw a young woman being pulled into a dark-colored vehicle. "I'm not 100% sure. The snow was thick, but I remember a hand grabbing her arm, like pulling her. I thought about slowing down, but the car behind me honked, so I kept going," Jameson said. Police asked about the license plate or car make, but he shook his head. "It was dark, and with the snow, I couldn't see anything clearly except the car's dark color." Another witness, A student living near Riverway Park reported that between 10:15 and 10:20, while walking back to his dorm, he saw a man in a black coat following closely behind a girl in a light-colored coat. I didn't look closely, but I remember he was much bigger than her and walking faster, like trying to catch up, the student said. When shown Emily's photo, he nodded. It could be her, but I'm not sure. Both accounts were meticulously documented, with illustrative sketches, but both were vague, lacking solid details. Morales knew witness testimonies could be distorted by poor lighting and stress. Still, they were vital pieces. A dark-colored vehicle, a man in a black coat. In that evening's team meeting, Morales added 2 new sheets to the timeline: 10:22 p.m., taxi driver sighting, and 10:20, 10:25, pedestrian sighting. He circled them in red, then underlined all fragmentary, need confirmation. The room fell silent. Clearly, the investigation had gained new leads, but none carried enough weight to break through. Blurry cameras, witnesses with vague memories, it was all like shadows of the truth, flickering, within reach, then vanishing. Morales ended the meeting with a cold but resolute statement. We don't have anything solid yet, except one undeniable truth. Emily Carter didn't disappear on her own. Someone was following her. Someone stopped a car, and now, we have to find him. The vague witness accounts and blurry camera footage forced the investigation team back to the basics, narrowing down everyone who had contact with Emily, especially those who could have been near the MBTA or Riverway Park on the night of December 12, 2007. Lieutenant Morales compiled an initial list of 3 groups: close acquaintances, individuals who had caused trouble for Emily at the coffee shop, and known offenders active around Jamaica Plain. The first name mentioned was Jake Wilson, Emily's ex-boyfriend. They had dated for over a year, breaking up just months before her disappearance. Some friends said Jake was still clingy, occasionally showing up around the coffee shop where Emily worked. On December 14th, police brought Jake in for questioning. Under the harsh white lights, Jake appeared cooperative, but visibly nervous. He claimed that on the night of December 12th, he was in Cambridge, playing video games at a friend's apartment. But when asked for proof, Jake had no receipts, no credit card records, only a roommate who vouched for him. That roommate, however, admitted to going to bed early and couldn't confirm Jake's presence the entire evening. Investigators pressed him. Did you know Emily left the shop at 10:15? Were you around Heath Street? Jake shook his head, voice trembling. No, I haven't seen her since we broke up. Morales noted the inconsistency in his demeanor. Jake seemed both detached and scared when questioned about the critical time frame. But no direct evidence tied him to the case. Fingerprint and DNA samples, collected via a search warrant, didn't match those found on the scarf or backpack. Jake was temporarily cleared as a primary suspect, but his file was kept for monitoring. Beyond Jake, police reviewed 3 men previously reported for harassing customers, including Emily, at the Jamaica Plain coffee shop. One was a regular drunk, who had argued loudly when Emily refused him service. The second was a homeless man who loitered around the MBTA area, often begging and following female students. The third was a former employee fired for inappropriate behavior. Each was brought in for questioning. The drunk claimed he was at another bar that night, corroborated by multiple witnesses and bar security footage showing him there from 9 p.m. past midnight. The homeless man was found sleeping at South Station, confirmed by a security guard. The former employee was working in another state, with time card records proving he couldn't have been in Boston when Emily disappeared. To be thorough, the team collected DNA samples from all 3 and sent them for analysis. Results came back, no match with the unidentified DNA from the scarf. Once again, hopes of quickly identifying a culprit faded. In the meeting room, Morales crossed out each name on the suspect board. Every red stroke felt like a slash at their hopes, pushing the case deeper into a dead end. He looked back at the timeline. Emily left the shop, made a call, appeared on camera, then vanished, leaving behind her backpack and scarf, all in a mere 20 minutes. If it wasn't the ex-boyfriend or the known troublemakers, Then who? And why did this person vanish as if they never existed, leaving nothing but a few cold personal items? With initial suspects cleared, the team had no choice but to broaden the search. Morales knew that without new evidence, Emily Carter's case would soon stall. On December 17, 2007, he formally requested FBI assistance. The request was approved almost immediately, as the disappearance of a Boston University student was stirring public attention. A team of missing persons experts and seasoned K-9 units, trained for snowy conditions, was deployed to the scene. A large-scale operation began. Maps of Jamaica Plain, Riverway Park, and surrounding areas were spread across tables. Morales pointed to a red circle with a 1-mile radius around the MBTA Heath Street station. "We've covered this area. Now we expand at least 5 to 10 miles. The first area targeted was Blue Hills Reservation, a 7,000-acre forest just a half-hour drive from Boston, previously used to hide bodies in other cases. The second was the Charles River, the large waterway running through Boston, where many missing persons cases had ended tragically. On December 18, over 40 people, Boston police, FBI, and volunteers began scouring Blue Hills. Thick snow made movement grueling, with each step sinking knee-deep. K-9 units sniffed Emily's scarf and backpack before charging into the woods, combing bushes and small ravines. Searchers used metal detectors, hoping to find traces of zippers or her phone. But over 3 days, they found only unrelated scraps of old fabric. Simultaneously, another team worked with an underwater sonar unit to scan the Charles River. Small boats equipped with sonar swept the river section near Riverway. Screens showed white streaks, mostly sunken logs, metal debris, or rocks. Every suspicious signal prompted divers to check. The December river water was freezing, visibility low, making the search torturous. After a week, the report stated, "No body or related evidence found." The team returned empty-handed. Morales sat in the field command post, eyes fixed on the map. He knew resources were depleting fast. 3 weeks of dozens of officers, volunteers, K-9 units, sonar, and divers yielded no new clues. On the table, the evidence bags held just 3 items: the backpack, the scarf, and the phone log showing it went silent at 10:30. In a meeting with the FBI, an agent said bluntly, "We need to consider efficiency. If Emily was taken by car, she could have been moved out of Boston that night. Blue Hills and Charles River are just assumptions." Morales nodded, but new options were dwindling. The Carter family called daily, asking for updates. The response remained, "We're doing our best." Media began daily coverage, adding pressure. Reporters camped outside Boston PD headquarters, peppering officers with questions. Headlines like 3 weeks no new leads appeared on front pages, weighing heavily on the investigators' morale. By late December, the large-scale search was officially paused. A lengthy report summarized hundreds of hours and square kilometers searched, but no valuable findings. Morales left the field command post on the final night, snow still falling, standing silently facing Riverway Park. In his leather notebook he wrote briefly, "Resources drained, case stalled. Need a new breakthrough." Emily Carter had been missing for 3 weeks. All police had was a 15-minute gap in the timeline and a few cold pieces of evidence. Despite an unprecedented search effort, the case began to slow, teetering on the edge of becoming a cold case. Early 2008, as Boston remained gripped by a harsh winter, the Emily Carter investigation entered a grim phase. 3 weeks of extensive searches with FBI, K-9 units, divers, sonar on the Charles River, and dozens of officers yielded nothing. No body, no new witnesses, no additional evidence. The sealed bags with the backpack, scarf, and silent phone became the only remnants. In an internal report to superiors, Lieutenant David Morales wrote succinctly, "No progress. Case to be archived, awaiting new technology." On January 15, 2008, Emily Carter's file was officially designated a cold case. This meant the case wasn't closed, but active investigation nearly halted. It would only reopen with new evidence or technology capable of processing existing samples. For Morales, it was a bitter failure. In his years as a cop, he knew the helplessness of watching a case go cold, not just a file, but a real life lost, with no answers for the victim's family. The evidence was stored in Boston PD's archive room #3, a cold space with hundreds of metal shelves holding thousands of sealed bags from unsolved cases. Emily's red knit scarf sat in a nylon bag labeled #017. The navy blue backpack, zipper still worn, was sealed as #018. Her old flip phone, battery detached and inoperable, became #019. A smaller plastic bag with hairs and fibers from the backpack was labeled #020. All were placed on a shelf, tagged case #2007 EC, missing person, cold. Investigators from the case gradually moved to new assignments. Boston faced other serious violent crimes, and Emily's disappearance, though heartbreaking, faded from priority. In the office, the timeline chart once covering the whiteboard was rolled up and filed. The once buzzing room, filled with debates, grew empty, leaving faded sticky notes on the walls. The Carter family refused to accept the silence. Emily's parents called Boston PD weekly, demanding updates. But the response was repetitive. No new developments. The case remains open. They hired private investigators, printed more missing posters, and plastered them across Worcester and Boston. Local media occasionally ran brief updates. Carter family continues search for missing daughter. But within months, public interest waned. People moved on to newer stories, hotter headlines. Emily Carter became another name on Boston's long list of unexplained missing persons. In the 2008 year-end report, the note on Emily's case was brief. Case #2007 EC, no new leads. Evidence preserved, awaiting new technology. For Morales, it felt like an indictment of his team's failure. Often, passing the archive room, he'd pause at shelf #3, staring at the evidence bags bearing Emily's name. He knew the answers were there, but 2007-2008 technology couldn't unlock them. In the years that followed, the case surfaced sporadically. Each anniversary of her disappearance, the Carters held a small prayer vigil, lighting candles at Riverway Park, where the backpack and scarf were found. Media sometimes covered it, writing short pieces titled, 16 years, still no answers. But no one could offer new information. Police followed protocol. Annually, cold cases were briefly reviewed, marked no progress, and returned to the shelf. For Emily's classmates, her disappearance became a haunting memory. Many had graduated, started jobs or families, but when asked about Emily, they paused, recalling a bright, kind girl lost to a 15-minute gap. They too understood that without new technology, the case would remain frozen. As Morales had predicted in his brief note, all hope rested on the future. The fine hairs, fabric fibers on the backpack, faint fingerprints on the scarf, all meticulously sealed, quietly waiting for science to advance enough to make them speak. Perhaps a single DNA fragment could revive Emily Carter's mystery, pulling it from the cold shadows of the archive. But in 2008, everything stood still. The case was officially labeled a cold case. 13 years later, as Boston moved through countless new cases, Emily Carter's name rarely appeared in the news. Yet, in the chilly basement of the police department, the case #2007 EC box remained untouched. Inside, the sealed nylon bags, the red scarf, blue backpack, old phone, a few hairs and fabric scraps, sat as cold as the day they were shelved. Each year, the file was briefly opened for routine review, then closed with the familiar note, no progress, evidence preserved, awaiting new technology. In early 2020, when the cold case unit was restructured with new funding, its commander, Lieutenant Sarah Donnelly, decided to review a series of long-standing missing persons cases that could benefit from next-generation DNA technology. Emily Carter's file was quickly selected. Donnelly read through the old reports, flipping through every sealed evidence log, lingering on the nylon bag with the red scarf. A 2007 note faintly read, "Biological traces insufficient for analysis with current technology." That was the point she believed 13 years later technology could address. "We're sending this sample to Othram Lab in Texas," Donnelly announced during a meeting with her young investigators. Othram was renowned in U.S. forensic circles for solving cold cases with just a few remaining DNA cells. They didn't rely solely on CODIS, but used comprehensive gene sequencing to build detailed genetic profiles for genealogical investigation. The goal was clear: identify a DNA profile of any stranger who interacted with Emily that night. In February 2020, nylon bag #017 containing the scarf was retrieved from cold storage. Strict chain of custody protocols were followed. Morales and the 2007 forensic team's signatures were verified. Photos documented the seals, and the bag was placed in a specialized container for air transport to Texas. For many in the team, it was their first time seeing the actual evidence, and a chilling awe settled in as they gazed at the darkened scarf, still bearing faint snow stains from 13 years ago. At Othram Lab, experts began the analysis. They knew time was the greatest enemy in old cases. DNA degrades, risks contamination, and sometimes leaves traces so faint they seem useless. But with next-generation sequencing, a single cell could yield data. Fibers from the red scarf were picked up under microscopes, cotton swabs with faint biological traces carefully placed in machines. Centrifuges spun, DNA was extracted, then fed into a comprehensive sequencing system, reading millions of tiny gene segments. The process took weeks, but screens gradually displayed data strings, as if Emily were finally speaking after 13 years of silence. In March 2020, Othram Lab sent its report, a secure email with a succinct subject, Case #2007 EC, DNA report. Arrived at Boston PD's cold case unit. In the meeting room, Lieutenant Sarah Donnelly opened the PDF on a large screen, blue light reflecting on tense faces. For 13 years, they had only powerless evidence. Now, hope rested on the lines of the scientific report before them. The results began with a definitive statement. Sample #017 contains a complete DNA profile of an unidentified male, not belonging to the victim. The room's focus locked onto Donnelly. They now held what prior investigators never had: a genetic profile, an undeniable biological fingerprint of someone who had touched Emily Carter. But excitement quickly gave way to harsh reality when technicians cross-checked the sample with CODIS, the largest U.S. criminal DNA database. The result: no hit, no matches. The man wasn't in the database of convicts, felons, or any recorded criminal profiles. Once again, darkness loomed over the room. However, Othram's experts were prepared for this. The report continued. Y chromosome lineage, useful for genealogy. Suggest proceeding with genealogical database search. This meant the DNA sample had strong Y chromosome data to build a family tree through open databases like GEDmatch or Family Tree DNA. Not finding the man in CODIS didn't mean a dead end. It only meant he hadn't been arrested or tested in the justice system. But if he had relatives, even distant ones, 4 or 5 generations removed, who had voluntarily submitted DNA to genealogical databases, a trace could still be found. Donnelly printed the report, tapping her pen on the note, useful for genealogy. She looked at her team. We're going this route. This isn't a game of chance anymore. This is new technology, and it's cracked dozens of cold cases across the U.S. Within the week, the male DNA profile from the scarf was formatted into a digital file and uploaded to GEDmatch, a platform comparing DNA from millions who voluntarily shared it to find relatives. The analysis took days. The system compared millions of gene segments, searching for chromosomal similarities, and finally returned a list of over 200 matches. This confirmed the suspect wasn't directly in the database, but his shadow faintly reflected through distant relatives. An internal Boston PD report noted, This is the first breakthrough in 13 years. We have a specific male DNA profile. Cutis yielded no match, but genealogical analysis shows multiple distant relatives in the system. Building a family tree will take months, but this is the only path forward. In the investigation room, the mood was both heavy and charged with hope. Donnelly stood silently before Morales's old timeline. Eyes fixed on 10:30, phone silent. She slowly added a new note below, 2020, DNA profile identified, male. Genealogical lead. That invisible red thread connected 2 moments over a decade apart, from a snow-soaked scarf in a dark alley in 2007 to gene sequences glowing on a modern server screen. From that moment, Emily Carter was no longer just a name on a cold case file. She had left an indelible biological trace, and it was leading them to a flesh-and-blood man. The only question, who was he among the hundreds of names scattered across a vast family tree? When GD Match returned over 200 distant matches, the cold case unit knew they were embarking on the toughest phase, reconstructing a multi-generational family tree from fragmented pieces. Donnelly brought in 2 genealogists, including Dr. Mark Ellison, who had helped solve the Golden State Killer case. Upon entering the room, Ellison set up a large whiteboard in the center of the investigation room and began sketching the first branches of the family tree from the initial match list. Most matches had low genetic overlap, 1% to 5%, indicating 3rd to 5th generation relatives. As Ellison put it, it was like assembling a 1,000-piece puzzle without the original picture. They started with stronger matches, around 40, 50 centimorgans, suggesting distant paternal or maternal relatives. Each name was entered into specialized software, cross-referenced with public databases like Ancestry, Family Tree DNA, and especially Massachusetts civil records. Over weeks, a 6th-generation diagram took shape. From great-grandparents in the late 19th century, branches spread across New England, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Maine, but most densely in Massachusetts. Each branch was meticulously noted, which family, where descendants migrated, who was alive between 2000 and 2010. Those too old or too young were gradually eliminated, narrowing it to males aged roughly 25, 35 in 2007, when Emily vanished. In the process of building the tree, genealogists used birth records, death certificates, marriage registries, and even church newsletters, and published obituaries to connect long-lost family ties. On the whiteboard, hundreds of small squares represented individuals, linked by green and red lines. A computer graphics program was also used to create a digital version, but the experts preferred the physical board's overview, where each branch could be circled with a marker. As the diagram took shape, one prominent family emerged, the Moores, with deep roots in Boston's Dorchester area. The distant DNA matches repeatedly aligned with this branch, strengthening the hypothesis that the suspect belonged to the Moore lineage. Genealogist Mark Ellison circled the name in red marker, underlining a note, Dorchester Cluster, primary lead. From there, the investigation team focused entirely on narrowing down the Moore branch. From a great-grandparent with 8 children, the family tree spread into multiple families across Boston. 3 branches had migrated to other states. 1 ended due to no male heirs. Only 4 branches were truly significant, with male descendants in the right age range. A preliminary list quickly formed about 15 names, all born between 1975 and 1985. When the genealogist cross-referenced this list with 2007 residency data, the picture became clearer. Some had left Massachusetts, others were in the military or studying out of state. After several rounds of elimination, only 3 men were confirmed to have lived in Boston at the time of Emily's disappearance, all residing in or near Jamaica Plain or Dorchester, within a few miles of the crime scene. On the meeting room's whiteboard, 3 names were written boldly in red ink: Daniel Moore, 1981, Stephen Moore, 1979, and Michael Harris, 1982, a Moore descendant through his mother. These were no longer distant branches on a chart, but 3 specific individuals, 3 names that could hold the answer to a 13-year mystery. Immediately, the team analyzed each man's file in detail. Stephen Moore, born 1979, worked as a maintenance worker at a downtown Boston office building in 2007. Employment records confirmed he was on a night shift on December 12, backed by multiple co-workers and electronic timecard data, as well as internal camera footage. Stephen was removed from the primary suspect list, narrowing the focus to 2 names. Michael Harris, born 1982, was a Moore descendant through his mother. He had lived in Dorchester but moved to New Hampshire in mid-2006 to attend a technical school. School records, rental receipts, and a roommate's statement confirmed he wasn't in Boston when Emily vanished. Though kept on a reserve list, Michael was marked in green, low probability. That left Daniel Moore, born 1981, living in Dorchester throughout 2007. His residence was just 0.8 miles from Riverway Park, a 10-minute walk. This detail caught Donnelly's attention. We're talking about a man living right by the scene, in the perfect age range, with DNA tying him to the Moore family. This can't be a coincidence, she said in a meeting. Daniel's file was reopened. In 2007, shortly after Emily's disappearance, he had been briefly questioned by local police. The reason? A vague witness report of a tall man in a black coat following Emily. Daniel, with his large build and habitual black leather coat, fell under scrutiny. But after a few hours of questioning, no direct evidence was found, and he was released. In the report, Morales, then the lead investigator, noted, Moore, Daniel, questioned, no evidence. Released. That seemingly innocuous note now returned like a steel hook. This time, with genealogical data in hand, the cold case unit dug deeper. They reviewed Daniel's criminal history. Indeed, he had a record of minor assaults, a 2005 bars fight, and a 2006 neighbor dispute. Neither case had enough evidence for serious charges, resulting only in warnings or light fines. But to Donnelly, these were signs of potential violent behavior. Investigators also traced Daniel's residency history. He grew up in Dorchester, dropped out of school, and worked odd jobs. Laborer, repairman, delivery driver, all unstable. Notably, in 2007, Daniel lived alone in a rented apartment just blocks from the MBTA Heath Street station, the route Emily took after her late shifts. The Cold Case Unit's June 2020 internal report concluded, 3 primary suspects filtered from genealogical tree, 2 have clear alibis, 1 low probability. Daniel Moore stands out. Age, residence, prior violent behavior, questioned in 2007. High likelihood as the next investigative target. However, Donnelly remained cautious. She ordered the team to gather more information on Daniel before taking action. Young investigators were assigned to track his current activities. They found Daniel now lived in Quincy, working as a warehouse laborer. He was reclusive, with no family, and neighbors described him as gruff, quiet, sometimes irrationally angry. Donnelly addressed the team. We've gone from over 200 distant matches to 1 specific man. DNA, genealogy, residence, criminal history, all point to Daniel Moore. It's time to move from analysis to action. On the whiteboard, Daniel Moore's name was double-circled in bold red. The other 2 names were crossed out. The room's atmosphere shifted from the haze of hundreds of distant matches to the clarity of a single target. Everyone understood that from this moment, the investigation had entered a new phase, full focus on Daniel Moore, the man who slipped through suspicion in 2007, but now loomed undeniable. With Daniel Moore identified as the top candidate from the family tree, Boston PD knew they couldn't rush. Arresting the wrong person could collapse the case, and approaching too soon might alert him, risking evidence destruction. The Cold Case Unit devised a plan, covert surveillance for weeks, waiting for Moore to unknowingly discard DNA for direct comparison with the male DNA from Emily Carter's 2007 scarf. This was their one shot to pierce 13 years of darkness. From July 2020, 2 unmarked cars began parking alternately near Moore's Quincy apartment. Officers rotated shifts to avoid suspicion. Surveillance reports described a man in his mid-40s, slightly stocky, with close-cropped, prematurely gray hair, walking with the rigid gait of someone who'd lived an unstable life. Moore worked night shifts at a suburban warehouse, often returning after midnight, carrying trash bags filled with empty beer cans. He smoked constantly, standing on his porch around 2 a.m., exhaling white plumes into the summer haze. Investigators noted, heavy beer drinker, smokes Marlboro cigarettes, habitually discards trash in separate black plastic bags, potential opportunity. The first week, they couldn't approach. Daniel was cautious, dumping trash during busy hours to blend in. But in the second week, a slip occurred. One night, he drank 6 beers on his porch, stubbed cigarettes into the cans, then tossed them into a loosely tied plastic bag by the apartment's trash bin. He went inside without securing it. After his lights went out, 2 investigators, gloved, quietly retrieved the bag, replacing it with an empty one to avoid suspicion. Inside 7 beer cans with lip marks, 5 cigarette butts with ash, a tissue with mucus. All were sealed in evidence bags, labeled with time, location, and collector, then rushed to Boston PD's forensic lab. On the investigation board, Donnelly wrote in red, "First DNA harvest, potential direct comparison." But they didn't stop. Over 2 months, the surveillance team collected everything Moore discarded. Once, at a Dorchester Avenue bar, he drank beer and left a glass with lip marks. An undercover agent, posing as a patron, wrapped it in a napkin and left. Another time, they retrieved a half-eaten takeout box from the building's shared trash. Later, a tissue he used to wipe sweat in his car was blown out by wind, an opportunity they seized. These small scraps formed a vast biological archive. The operations report detailed 24 samples, beer cans, cigarette butts, a glass, tissues, a takeout box, even a plastic bottle cap. All were sealed and sent to Massachusetts State Lab, where technicians use sequencing processes like Othrams to seek a final match. Days later, as morning light barely warmed, the cold case unit's inbox pinged with a new message, an urgent email from the lab. Subject: DNA report. Donnelly opened it, summoning the team around the conference table. The large screen displayed dense charts, genetic markers, and statistical columns. But all eyes locked on the report's final line, bolded like a hammer strike: conclusive match, DNA obtained from scarce and DNA collected from discarded items of Daniel Moore are identical across all loci tested. Probability of random match, less than 1 in 7 billion, no room for denial, no space for coincidence. After 13 years, Emily Carter's case had found its man. The room was silent for seconds, only the projector's hum audible. A young investigator exhaled, almost laughing from tension. Another clenched fists, tapping the table. Donnelly said nothing at first, nodding, eyes red with emotion. "This is the evidence we prayed for," she said slowly. "And now it's in our hands." The report was printed, bound into a thick file, and sent to the Suffolk County DA's office. Prosecutors reviewed the evidence chain, ensuring no loopholes for Moore's defense. The file showed the scarf was properly sealed in 2007, stored in a temperature-controlled evidence locker, never opened outside testing protocols. DNA from Moore's beer cans, cigarette butts and tissues was legally collected as abandoned DNA. Every step was documented with logs and photos. The lead prosecutor, after reviewing, confirmed, "This evidence is rock solid. We have enough for an arrest warrant." A plan was set. Donnelly drafted a detailed brief for a federal judge from December 12, 2007, when Emily Carter vanished in -4-degree cold. The evidence found in a dark alley near Riverway Park. A case gone cold for over a decade, to next-generation DNA sequencing, opening the door to Daniel Moore. The brief emphasized error probability less than 1 in 7 billion. This is direct, scientifically robust evidence. While awaiting the judge's approval, the office buzzed with tension. Some investigators prepared for a tactical scenario. Moore had a history of assault, arrested once for a bar fight, so he might be armed. Boston PD's SWAT was on standby. Another team handled warrants for his apartment and car, anticipating further evidence. All moved urgently but cautiously. After over a decade, no one wanted to lose this chance over a small mistake. Late afternoon, snow fell heavily on Boston, blanketing office windows. The desk phone rang, and the room hushed. Donnelly answered, listened briefly, then turned to her team. "The judge signed," she said curtly. The room erupted. Some stood, slapping backs. Others sighed, as if shedding a 13-year burden. But the joy lasted minutes. Everyone knew the toughest step lay ahead: confronting, arresting, and interrogating Daniel Moore. Donnelly held the DNA file, rereading conclusive match. She whispered, almost to herself, "Emily finally has a voice." Then she set the file down and ordered, "Prepare everything. Tomorrow, we bring Daniel Moore to the interrogation room." Under cold neon light, the forensic report lay like a pre-written verdict, awaiting police execution. Emily Carter's case was no longer cold. It had entered a new chapter: justice. In February 2023, Quincy's streets were icy, snow blanketing the harborside lanes. At 5 a.m., a convoy of Boston PD and SWAT vehicles quietly parked outside Daniel Moore's 3-story apartment building, where he rented the second floor. Every detail was planned: surprise, speed, no chance for him to destroy evidence or flee. Lieutenant Sarah Donnelly stood back, signaling the SWAT leader to proceed. Within seconds, a megaphone blared, "Police, open the door now." No response. The door was breached with a hydraulic tool, and the team stormed in, guns trained on the hallway. Daniel Moore was found in his bedroom, startled awake in pajamas. He froze as flashlights and shouts filled the room. 2 officers pinned him to the bed, cuffing his hands behind his back. Moore didn't resist or speak, only breathing heavily, head bowed. "Daniel Moore, you're under arrest in connection with the 2007 disappearance of Emily Carter," an investigator read loudly. Each word echoed in the silent space, closing 13 years of evasion. As Moore was let out, another team executed the search warrant. A laptop on a table was seized, along with 2 external hard drives, an old notebook, several document boxes, and a modern smartphone. His closet was searched, yielding personal papers and bank receipts. Every item was bagged, labeled, and numbered. Crime scene technicians photographed the room, from furniture placement to shoe prints on the floor. A worn leather notebook on his desk was sealed separately, potentially holding critical information. Neighbors peeked out, stunned to see Daniel, the reclusive, quiet man, escorted out, dazed and handcuffed. A woman whispered, "I knew something was off about him, but not a case from over a decade ago." Police maintained order, directing everyone back inside. Moore was loaded into an armored van, flanked by 2 officers. He remained utterly silent, asking nothing, reacting to nothing. His vacant stare fixed on the frosted window as streetlights faded behind. To police, his silence wasn't calm. It was the realization that the game was over. At a temporary command post outside, Donnelly reviewed the search team's report. She tapped her pen on the line. Notebook, diary seized. With years of experience, she knew personal journals could unlock details. DNA couldn't. She ordered, "Get everything to the evidence room today, not a minute's delay." By 8 a.m., news of Daniel Moore's arrest spread. Local TV stations sent reporters to Quincy, filming police barricades and SWAT vehicles leaving. Crawlers read, "Boston 2007 cold case, suspect arrested after 15 years." The community was shaken, but in the cold case unit office, focus remained. They knew the arrest was just the first step. Ahead lay interrogation, cross-referencing new evidence, and reconstructing the night Emily vanished. Moore was brought to Boston PD headquarters, led down a long corridor to a holding cell. An officer reread his Miranda rights. "You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can be used against you in court. You have the right to an attorney." He nodded, silent. Under cold neon light, Moore's face looked pale, his eyes adrift, as if realizing all escapes were closed. As the cell door slammed shut, Donnelly stood outside, peering through the small window. After over a decade, they had him, the man DNA pulled from the shadows. But she knew the decisive step remained, making him reveal the truth about Emily Carter. The notebook, hard drives, and laptop just seized could be the missing pieces of that horrific puzzle. The interrogation room at Boston PD headquarters was stark, neon light glaring on a metal table. Daniel Moore sat back, hands on the table, cuffs removed but red marks lingering on his wrists. His face was tense, but feigned calm. Lieutenant Sarah Donnelly and veteran investigator Mark Rivera entered, carrying a thick file. The door closed with a harsh thud in the cramped space. Rivera began, voice slow. "Daniel, you know why you're here. This isn't speculation or rumor anymore. We have evidence." Moore shrugged, forcing a smile. "I didn't do anything. Maybe I just ran into that girl in 2007, but I don't know anything more." Donnelly didn't react hastily. She placed a color photo in front of him. Emily Carter's red knit scarf, evidence collected 16 years ago. "Recognize this. It's Emily's. Your DNA is on it. How do you explain that?" Moore glanced at the photo, then looked away, stammering, I passed through that area. Maybe I touched something. I don't know, just a coincidence." Rivera leaned back, smirking coldly. "A coincidence rarer than 1 in 7 billion? Daniel, you think a jury will buy that?" Over the next minutes, the investigators took turns presenting pieces of the puzzle. Blurry MBTA footage showed a man in a black coat following Emily at 10:20 p.m., just before she vanished. A taxi driver, witness reported seeing a young woman pulled into a dark-colored car near Heath Street. Rivera locked eyes with Moore. "Black coat, dark car. They describe someone like you. And now the scarf's DNA matches you 100%. Moore bit his lip, fists clenching, but insisted, No, I didn't kidnap anyone. I was just passing by." Donnelly shifted tactics. Her voice softened, almost maternal. "Daniel, it's been 16 years. Have you ever slept soundly? Can you look in the mirror and call yourself innocent? Science has caught up. DNA doesn't lie. We collected it from your beer cans, cigarette butts last year. Perfect match. You can deny everything, but you can't deny what your own body left behind." He sighed, eyes dropping to the table. After a silent pause, he whispered, "Maybe I talked to her, but I didn't hurt her." Rivera jumped in. "Talked? You were questioned back then, remember? You claimed you were in Cambridge that night, but no one could confirm it. Now DNA brings you back. You call that a coincidence lasting 16 years?" The room's air grew thick. Cameras recorded every gesture, every glance from the suspect. Donnelly slid the file toward him, containing a large timeline of December 12, 2007, 10:15. Emily left the coffee shop. 10:20 appeared on MBTA camera. 10:30 phone went silent. 10:45. Family couldn't reach her. Every point aligns with your movements, Daniel. We tracked you for 2 months, collected trash, glasses, cigarettes. DNA doesn't air. Anything else you want to say? Daniel tapped his fingers on the table, an erratic rhythm. He glanced around, breathing faster, then blurted out, "You don't understand. I didn't mean to. Things got out of control." Donnelly and Rivera exchanged a quick glance. He was starting to crack. Rivera leaned forward, lowering his voice. "Then tell the truth. Where were you? What did you do? And where is Emily? This is your last chance to talk, before the gavel comes down." But Daniel clenched his fists, then looked up, his voice hardening. "I want a lawyer." The words cut through the taut atmosphere like a knife. Donnelly nodded, signaling the officer outside. The interrogation had to stop immediately per Miranda rules. Before leaving, Donnelly stood, staring at Moore. "You can stay silent today, but science has already spoken for you. You hid for 16 years, but not anymore." The door slammed shut. Donnelly and Rivera stepped into the hallway, exhaling. They didn't have a confession, but the DNA evidence, timeline, witnesses, and Moore's wavering responses were enough to take the case to court. He could keep denying, but the truth was locked in the cells he left on Emily's red scarf. After the first interrogation, Daniel Moore was returned to his holding cell. The metal door closed, and constant white lights stripped away any sense of time. He sat silently on the narrow bed, head bowed, hands clasped. His lawyer visited, advising silence. Nothing you say will help. But when the visitation door closed, Daniel sank into emptiness. His mind replayed the red scarf police showed him, and the DNA match numbers. He knew the game was over. Hours passed, and Daniel felt suffocated. The steady sound of officers' boots in the hallway, the clang of metal doors, all underscored his powerlessness. When Rivera and Donnelly returned, they didn't start with rapid-fire questions. Donnelly gently placed photos on the table. Emily Carter in a winter sweater, her family lighting candles at the 10th anniversary vigil. A newspaper headline reading, "Cold Case Emily Carter, Family Never Gave Up Hope." Donnelly said softly, "For 16 years, her parents never stopped searching. You know, every year they light candles at Riverway Park, but they've never had answers. You could change that." Daniel stared at Emily's photo, his eyes bloodshot. He mumbled, I just wanted to talk. I didn't mean." His voice trailed off, more a confession to himself than an answer. Rivera seized the moment, leaning in. "You lost control. It happened. But you stayed silent for 16 years, leaving her family in hell. Daniel, science has pointed to you. DNA doesn't lie. How long will you keep denying?" A heavy silence enveloped the room. Daniel trembled, tapping erratically on the metal table. He whispered, "I met her that night, near Heath Street. She was walking ahead, I followed. I don't know why, I just couldn't control myself. When she turned, I panicked. It happened so fast. She fought back, then fell. I didn't know what to do." Donnelly kept her voice steady. "What happened next?" Daniel clutched his head, eyes shut tight. "I pulled her into my car. I drove straight out of Boston, my heart pounding like it would explode. I couldn't think of anything but hiding her. I went to Blue Hills Reservation. In the woods, I dug a shallow hole with my hands and buried her there. No one knew, just me." The interrogation room held its breath. Rivera pressed, "You're saying Blue Hills Reservation, you buried Emily Carter there?" Daniel nodded, shoulders slumping, as if shedding a decade-long burden. "Yes, I'll show you where. I can't take it anymore." Everything was recorded, filmed, with his lawyer present to confirm the statement was voluntary. A transcript was prepared immediately, each word read back, and Daniel signed it. As the pen scratched the paper, the sound marked the end of his years of hiding the truth. Outside in the hallway, Donnelly and Rivera walked in silence. They knew much work remained, mobilizing forensics, securing a warrant for Blue Hills, preparing a large-scale search. But in that moment, they felt relief. After 16 years, the suspect had spoken, revealing where Emily Carter rested. Early one morning, in late February 2023, a convoy of Boston PD and forensic vehicles streamed into Blue Hills Reservation. The air was cold, fog cloaking the trees, breaths forming white wisps. The vast preserve, a popular Boston picnic spot, became the scene of a truth buried for 16 years. Daniel Moore, in an orange jumpsuit, hands cuffed, was escorted to point out the location. He walked slowly, head down, shoes sinking into the damp earth. Donnelly and Rivera stayed close, eyes fixed on him. Deep in the woods, Daniel stopped at a dense tree cluster, about 100 meters from a trail. Trembling, he pointed to a flat patch near an old oak. "There, I buried her there." His voice was hoarse, barely audible. Forensics immediately cordoned off the area. Yellow tape went up, cameras captured the scene, then every detail. Technicians began carefully scraping away soil with trowels and shovels. The air grew heavy. Everyone knew this moment would redefine the case from a mysterious disappearance to a confirmed homicide. After just over an hour, a shovel hit something hard. Soil was brushed aside, revealing bone fragments. An investigator gasped, but quickly fell silent, letting forensics continue. Earth was meticulously removed, uncovering a clear skeletal form in a shallow pit. Rotted clothing clung to the bones, only scraps of dark fabric remaining. Nearby was an old leather wallet, faintly showing a Boston University logo. Donnelly stood silently, clutching her file, heart aching. She'd imagined this moment for 16 years, but its reality still stung. Rivera whispered, "We found Emily." Technicians, gloved, lifted each bone into numbered evidence bags. Clothing, wallet, and items were carefully collected. The wallet, when opened, held a faded note with handwritten shift schedules from the Jamaica Plain coffee shop, a silent testament to the victim's identity. The remains were sent to the Massachusetts Forensic Lab for analysis. The process took weeks, but early dental records matched Emily Carter's university dental file perfectly. DNA from the bones, compared to her parents' samples, confirmed a perfect match. The official report stated, "Human remains recovered from Blue Hills Reservation, identified as Emily Carter, female, born 1985, missing since December 12, 2007. On the day of the results, the Carter family was called to Boston PD. Emily's parents sat across from Donnelly, eyes welling. Donnelly spoke slowly. "We've found Emily. Confirmed by DNA and dental records. I know this can't ease your loss, but you finally have answers," the mother sobbed, clutching her daughter's photo. The father nodded, voice choked. Thank you for not giving up." For the team, it was both closure and a new beginning. Emily Carter's file was no longer missing person, but officially homicide investigation. On the case folder, cold case was struck through, replaced with a red stamp, active murder case. In the report to prosecutors, Donnelly wrote, "Remains and evidence recovered at Blue Hills Reservation, along with suspect Daniel Moore's direct confession, confirm Emily Carter's 2007 disappearance as a homicide. All scientific evidence, including DNA and dental records, matches. We recommend prosecuting the suspect for first-degree murder." Media erupted. Boston cold case solved after 16 years. Remains of Emily Carter recovered. Massachusetts residents were stunned. Many who followed the case years ago lit candles at Riverway Park. Emily was no longer a name on a missing persons list, but had her identity restored, albeit in the deepest sorrow. Daniel Moore shifted from suspect in a disappearance to defendant in a murder case. In his cell, silent, he knew each court date and piece of forensic evidence would rebuild that fateful 2007 night. His 16-year silence was over. Blue Hills Reservation, once a peaceful picnic spot, now bore the mark of an exposed crime. For Boston PD, Emily Carter's case entered its final phase, preparing to try the man who took her life. The Massachusetts Forensic Lab began meticulous work as soon as Emily Carter's remains arrived from Blue Hills. On cold stainless steel tables, nylon bags containing bones, rotted clothing, and accompanying evidence were numbered and arranged. A solemn air hung over the room. After 16 years, Emily was finally in a place where science could speak for her. Dr. Grace Holloway, lead examiner, took charge. She opened the bag with the first rib bones, placing them under a light. After hours of measurement, she found at least 3 ribs with fractures from the same time, showing no healing, indicating they occurred at or near death. The compression fractures suggested a strong direct blow to the chest. Holloway's preliminary report stated gravely, the victim likely suffered a heavy blow to the chest with a blunt object or was crushed during a struggle. Next, wrist and forearm bones were analyzed. Under a microscope, Holloway noted deep grooves consistent with rope or cord marks. The depth and direction indicated the victim was tightly bound while resisting. This directly supported the theory that Emily wasn't just ambushed, but violently restrained. The remaining clothing, a sweater fragment and torn jeans, was examined. The jeans' hem showed twisted fibers, possibly from being yanked. Soil clumps on the fabric matched the burial site's soil type, as Moore confessed. Inside a jeans pocket, they found a faded MBTA bus pass, dated December 2007, a final relic of an unfinished journey. Skull fragments revealed a small crack at the temple, not enough for a sole cause of death, but combined with broken ribs and binding marks, it painted a comprehensive picture of violence. The official forensic report stated, cause of death likely due to severe chest trauma combined with restraint. Evidence points to intentional violence, not an accident. Bone DNA, retested against Emily's parents' samples, confirmed identity with absolute certainty. Soil on the bones matched the excavation site, validating Moore's confession. Each detail was another steel nail in the prosecution's case. Reading the forensic report in her office, Donnelly sighed, fingers tracing the pages. Each line was a dagger, reminding her of Emily's ordeal that night. Stalked, attacked, bound, buried in a shallow grave. Rivera slammed the table, voice choked. This isn't just murder, it's premeditated, first degree. He has no way out. The Suffolk County DA received the file immediately. In a meeting with the team, the prosecutor outlined charges: direct DNA from the scarf and Moore's samples, his confession of taking Emily to Blue Hills, recovered evidence, including wallet, clothing, and bones. Forensic confirmation of violent death. We have a closed chain of evidence, she said. It not only proves Daniel Moore was there, but that he intentionally killed. Moore's defense would likely argue he didn't intend to kill, that it was an accident during a struggle. But the forensic report debunked that wrist binding marks, rib fractures from direct force, and a skull crack proved intentional violence. These details elevated the charge from manslaughter to first-degree murder. In a closed meeting, Donnelly addressed the team firmly. 16 years ago, we were helpless. Now, every piece fits. No more guesses, no more doubts. This is the truth. And this truth will bring Daniel Moore to justice. That day, Emily Carter's file was stamped in red: homicide, first-degree murder. On the prosecutor's desk, files piled high, each page an undeniable accusation. In his cell, Daniel Moore sat silent, likely knowing each bone, fracture, and binding mark was now an eternal witness against him. November 2023, Suffolk County Courthouse, Boston, was packed. The Emily Carter case, after 16 years, gripped Massachusetts. Media swarmed, major networks broadcasting live daily. Outside, people carried Emily's photos, placed flowers, and lit candles. Their faces showed anticipation for justice, which the Carter family had awaited for over a decade and a half. In the courtroom, Daniel Moore sat at the defendant's table in a pale suit provided by his lawyer, his face ashen, eyes cold and helpless. Behind him, the Carter family sat quietly but resolute, Emily's parents, hair now gray, clutching hands tightly. The trial opened with Suffolk County Prosecutor Catherine Ellis addressing the jury, voice steely. On December 12, 2007, Emily Carter, a 22-year-old student, left the coffee shop where she worked. She never made it home. For 16 years, her family lived in hell. But science and persistence brought answers. Today we'll show an undeniable chain of evidence: defendant Daniel Moore's DNA on the victim's scarf, a family tree leading to the Moores, his confession, and finally, Emily's remains recovered from the exact spot he indicated. All will prove he abducted, restrained, and murdered Emily Carter. This is first-degree murder. The first evidence was the DNA results. On a large screen, genetic marker charts compared the scarf sample to Moore's beer can DNA. A forensic technician explained, the samples match across all tested loci, with a random match probability of less than 1 in 7 billion. Jurors listened intently, some nodding. Next, genealogist Mark Ellison testified, detailing how over 200 distant matches were narrowed to the Moore family, pinpointing Daniel. A sixth-generation family tree diagram stunned the courtroom, a testament to investigative science's progress. Evidence continued with the forensic report. Broken ribs, wrist-binding marks, a skull crack. Dr. Holloway stood at the stand, voice firm. These injuries aren't accidental. They reflect intentional violence, consistent with an attack and restraint. Prosecutor Ellis played Moore's confession. I met her. I lost control. I drove to Blue Hills and buried her. His hoarse voice echoed, prompting tears from the Carter family. The jury sat silent, no murmurs. When images of the Blue Hills remains appeared, alongside the leather wallet and MBTA pass, Ellis closed her case. Emily Carter was robbed of her future, buried like worthless debris. But we brought her back, and the man who did it sits before you. Moore's defense countered, arguing DNA collection from trash might violate privacy and that his confession was coerced under psychological pressure. A lawyer stated, "My client endured hours of interrogation without rest, in a distressed state. His words don't reflect truth, but desperation." Ellis rebutted, presenting interrogation logs and video showing Moore's lawyer present when he signed the confession. She stressed, "This wasn't coercion. This was the truth," he finally admitted. On DNA, she cited federal precedent allowing abandoned DNA, a cigarette butt, a beer can in the trash. These aren't private property. And from them, DNA pointed straight to Daniel Moore. During cross-examination, Moore spoke, voice shaky. "I didn't mean to kill her. I panicked. Things got out of control. I just want to apologize." But the jury remained unmoved, having heard overwhelming scientific and forensic evidence. After 4 weeks, with dozens of witnesses and experts, the trial neared its end. The jury deliberated for 2 days before returning. The foreman stood, "We find Daniel Moore guilty of first-degree murder," in the courtroom. Sobs erupted from the Carter family. Donnelly gripped Rivera's hand, eyes wet but resolute. The judge banged the gavel, sentencing, "Daniel Moore is sentenced to life imprisonment without parole." Moore's head dropped, face pale, eyes vacant. He was led out, cuffs glinting under the lights. Justice, after 16 years, arrived, not in joy, but in painful relief. Emily Carter was finally heard, through science, persistence, and this historic trial. Immediately after Daniel Moore's life sentence, media across the U.S. erupted. Major papers ran bold headlines. "Boston 2007 cold case, finally solved," emphasizing it as one of Massachusetts' longest cold cases, cracked by DNA and genealogy. TV news replayed trial moments, Moore hearing the verdict, and the Carters embracing, sobbing in the courtroom. Boston relived that 2007 winter night, when a young student vanished without a trace. Forensic experts, genealogists, and legal authorities hailed it as a milestone. The media dissected how a seemingly insignificant scarf became the silent witness that brought a perpetrator to light after 16 years. Many editorials wrote, "No crime can stay hidden forever." DNA technology and genealogical analysis have opened the door to justice for victims thought forgotten. The Boston community reacted strongly. Candlelight vigils were held at Riverway Park, where Emily's backpack and scarf were found years ago. Boston University students established a scholarship in her name for young people pursuing forensic science and criminal investigation. Professors called it Emily's legacy, a reminder that from her death, society learned lessons and took a significant step forward in using science to uphold justice. The Carter family, after nearly 2 decades, could finally give their daughter a proper burial. At the funeral, her father told the press, "We knew justice might come late, but it never loses its way. Our daughter has been heard." His words were widely quoted, becoming a message tied to the case. For Boston PD's investigators, the Emily Carter case became a textbook example in training curricula. Young officers were taught the importance of proper evidence storage, as the strict preservation in cold storage kept DNA intact after 16 years. Donnelly, now promoted, often repeated, "A sealed bag today could be the key to tomorrow's justice." The case also impacted legislation. The Massachusetts legislature discussed expanding funding for genealogical DNA analysis and establishing stricter privacy regulations. Despite debates, most agreed this technology was an inevitable step forward in solving long-standing cold cases. National television produced a special documentary titled "The Scarf That Spoke," chronicling the journey from 2007 to 2023. The image of the red scarf, abandoned in a dark alley, became a symbol of persistence and the power of science. As the case closed, Its aftershocks lingered not just in Boston but across the U.S. Families with loved ones missing in old cases found renewed hope. They looked to Emily Carter's case, believing that no matter how many years passed, the truth could still be uncovered. In her final press statement, Donnelly said, "We couldn't bring Emily back, but we did the only thing possible, found the truth, gave her a voice." Justice may be late, but it never loses its way. And that was the conclusion of a 16-year case, where a red thread of science connected past to present, bringing the light of justice to a place once shrouded in darkness. The story of the Emily Carter case is not just a closed criminal file after 16 years, but also offers profound lessons for American society today. First, it demonstrates the enduring power of forensic science and technology. A red scarf, seemingly meaningless, left in a dark alley in 2007, became critical evidence when DNA and genealogical technology in 2020 advanced enough to extract a genetic profile. This reminds us that scientific advancements in medicine, biotechnology, or genetic data are not merely academic, but directly protect justice, giving a voice to those once forgotten. Second, the persistence of investigators and the victim's family proves that justice, though delayed, never loses its way. Emily's parents lit candles yearly at Riverway Park, and Boston PD preserved every evidence bag in cold storage. Without that faith, the case would have remained a cold case forever. For Americans, this is a reminder of the value of perseverance, whether in family, work, or community. Finally, the case sounds an alarm about personal safety. Emily vanished in a mere 15-minute gap while walking home from the MBTA station, a detail highlighting the fragility of an ordinary moment. Today, as modern life still requires many to travel late, we must be more vigilant. Travel in groups, share itineraries with loved ones, and use tracking technology to enhance safety. From a tragedy 16 years ago, American society can learn that scientific progress, human persistence, and personal safety awareness are the three essential elements to ensure justice and safety are never forgotten. If you believe that justice, even if delayed, is worth pursuing to the end, please subscribe to join us in future journeys to uncover the truth. Thank you for following the Emily Carter case, and we'll see you in the next video with another chilling story from America's mysterious case files.